start with the scud back, and this is a 1/4 inch in clear. And what I'm going to do is, you can only use certain sections, shorter sections. This thing usually comes, twisted. It has some memory in it. So what I'll do is I'll get about a 6-inch section, 5-inch section, and stretch it out as much as I can so that it can sort of lay flat. And what this is it's a mat that I use for tying, but it's also a hobby mat for cutting things. So I can use it for a background for tying, or I can use it to easily cut things with my rotary cutter. And there's another video that I have on YouTube of using that rotary cutter. But basically what I'm going to do is, this is a ruler, a straight edge that I'm going to use, and it's clear so I can see sort of how much of this latex that I have trapped, And what I want to do is I want to try to measure it so that I can trim out about 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters at the most of material. You want this latex or scud back to be trimmed fairly narrow. I don't want it to be very thick at all. So you can get a couple of strips for each 1/4 inch strip that you pull through. And I'm going to take the rotary cutter, and I'm just going to press down. I'm not pressing it really hard. It doesn't take much to get through this material. You're going to press down and come up. And what you end up with, I'm going to keep that straight edge on there, is a strip of latex that should look like this. So it's a strip of latex that's about 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeters wide, not very wide. And you can use this for your flashbacks, to cover up your flashback, make it stronger. You can use it for the wing case on your midges. It's a really, really good material to use for wing casing. In this case, we're going to use it for the body of the midge. This is the Trojan midge is what I called it. Feel good about your tying now that we have all these scud back, all these latex materials. The reason why I called it a Trojan midge is because I used to have to get a condom and then cut that into strips because there wasn't very good latex. You could get latex gloves, but that's the reason why it's called a Trojan midge. Okay, now that you've got all your prep work done, you've got your strips cut of latex, we're going to get down to tying the fly. And it's not a very hard fly to tie, but everything that I do is for a reason. So if I start the thread here, you want to do that exact same thing. I developed this fly over years and years, and I've tried a bunch of different styles of this fly, and this is the one that I've ended up works best for me. I'm going to take the UTC 70 in brown olive. This color, if I had to pick one color that matches the midges and the black fly larva best, it would be this UTC brown olive. I use this a lot. And the hook that we're using is a Daiichi 1130 in size 18. So you're going to start your thread here in the center of the hook shank. So you're going to start that thread in the center, work your way up to the eye, and then we're going to come back. And what we're going to do is create this base layer of thread that runs from the center. And if you let your thread hang, the center of the hook shank in this instance would be right there where the thread is hanging with your the hook point. So you're gonna start the thread there, go up towards the eye, and then we're gonna go back up towards the eye. And what we've done is we're already creating that taper of a midge pupa black fly larva that is specifically thicker on one side than it is on the other, sort of a cigar taper. Then we're going to take this latex, this clear latex, and tie this in on the hook. You want to get really good at tying materials in without having to cut a lot of material off. This will save you time and save you materials, but I'm going to kind of do a loose wrap on that latex, and then I'm going to pull it. So I'm going to pull it to the end, and what that does is it allows me to wrap this latex in without having to pull it and snip it off at the head and then make the head a little bit fatter than it should be. And as I wrap back on the shank of the hook, I am pulling this latex firmly but not super hard. The thing I like about Scudback is it's super durable, so you can pull on it, but in this case I want some thickness to be there to the body. Then I'm going to wrap the thread, back up the hook shank. You can tell that it's already creating this slight taper. I don't need the taper to be really pronounced because we're going to put a pronounced head on it, but I definitely want that taper to be there. Then we're going to take this latex and wrap this end over end. The camera's in the way here, so I might bump it a couple of times, but when you are wrapping the latex, again, you want to pull firmly, but not so firmly that you distort the material. And I'm going to go and I'm going to wrap each one in the middle of the last wrap. So I'm going to overlap it by half. I want a piece of latex to be overlapped on the last wrap every time. And what that does, it creates part of the segmentation that's more translucent than the other. The thread is going to show through on half of the segment, and half of the segment is going to be more translucent. Nothing in nature is one color. It's usually kind of bicolor and multicolored camouflage. So I want this bug to be translucent, less translucent, translucent, less translucent, that way. That way I can sort of vary the color, variegate on the color. And then I'm going to wrap and tie off that latex. When you tie off stretchy material like this, flashback material, what you want to do is tie behind it. That wraps it off, but you also want to wrap in front of it to really tie it down. Any kind of slick material like that you want to tie down really well because it has a tendency to want to unwrap on itself. So now we're going to take this whip finish, if I could find the thread, and we're going to whip finish the brown olive, the UTC. We're all done with that brown olive. I'm going to cut this as close as you can get it. I'm actually tying flies looking through the lens of the camera, so it's super hard so I can get the camera this close. But now I'm going to take UTC black in 70 and we're going to create a head. And the head on this, remember when midges start to emerge, when betas start to emerge, they fill their wings with fluid. So the thorax of the bugs, of the real insects, gets super bulbous and big and real dark. So what I'm trying to do is imitate this midge pupa emerger, and I'm trying to imitate how big the head is because its wings are filling with fluid and it's getting ready to hatch. This is when the midges are more susceptible to the fish. This is when the fish know that they're sort of in this in-between stage of an adult and an emerger. So they're sort of crippled. They can't swim anymore and they can't fly. So they're in this in-between stage where they're real susceptible to fish, and this is why the fish key in on midge emergers, betas emergers. So I'm going to take my whip finish tool and I'm actually going to build a head on this fly while I'm whip finishing it. Then I want to clip this thread fairly close. Now if I'm tying a bunch of these, I'll use Sally Hansen's nail polish. You're going to use the clear hard as nails. It's just clear Sally Hansen's. Commercially, I'll tie a bunch of them, and then I have a bunch of them, I'm tying like 4 dozen at a time. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with a little bit of Solar Ease, some resin. The cool thing about this is it just dries so clear. And then I want to get that on the head, pretty much just coat it on that entire head itself, on the bottom and the top. What this does is it does two things. Obviously it makes the fly a lot more durable, but what it does mostly is it creates that big bulbous head that kind of looks like a bead. A lot of people think that my envy midges or my midge pupa have beads on them, but they don't. What they have is these Sally Hansen's or these resins. It was epoxy, you know, before we had any kind of good resins, we had to use epoxy. Feel lucky that you don't have to use that stuff because it's so smelly, and your working time is maybe 5 minutes before it starts to set up, and it sets up with a lot of bubbles. It was just hard stuff to work with. This resin is amazing. So that's the Trojan midge. And you can tell that what we've got is great segmentation. So we've got the segmentation of translucent, less translucent, translucent, less translucent. You've had durability because this latex is super durable. It's not going to break on a fish. And then the big part of it is we have a bigger bulbous head and then on a normal midge pupa, you know, midge larva pattern. And this is what the fish key in on, I think, when they're looking for when they're looking for black fly larva, black fly pupa, or midge pupa, midge emergers that are going to start to rise through the water column. I will fish this mostly as a nymph underwater, but when the hatch gets going, you know, you can lighten up your leader, lighten up your weight, and you put your strike indicator shallower so that you're fishing it just under the surface. And it's been a great fly for me, probably second or third best midge pupa pattern that I've invented. Try it out. Let me know what you think. Of course, you can try it in a bunch of different color patterns and a bunch of different head variations, but this is the variation that I've come up with after 15 years of tying this fly. Thanks everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can get updated on all the new projects that I'm working on in the future.